Well, Jeff, thrilled to have you here on this day of a dollar rally. Is it a brutal dollar move yet?
Brutal, something that Trichet used to speak about when talking about the euro. Now, one client, I think, mentioned this. Can you ever imagine, in the context of US inflation and US growth, or about exports, President-elect Trump or President Trump, when the time comes, saying we do not want a strong dollar? That's just unfathomable for his, personality, for the evidence that has presented at this point. So, is brutal going to be the right word to characterize something like that? Well, it's a surge for sure, though.
Right,
so
but
take that.
I mean, we're extrapolating, but you could see him saying that actually, if the dollar's too high, it's the other nations cheating America. Right, which is a rhetoric that we've heard over and over.
I think, as Lord Turner said in our last hour, we don't know what the rhetoric will be.
Right, and so how much do we know about dollar strength actually being sustained from now on? I mean, we don't even know if this great inflation experiment will work.
Right, so here's where the Fed comes back in, and also if you look at how Asian currencies, you mentioned the Malaysian ringgit, are they actually look at dollar strength right now, or looking at their own currencies weakening? I look at the CNY and what's going on right now. So I think there's a bit of both there. So there are two dynamics in play here. In Ruben's sense, clearly dollar strength, but worries in EM as well.
Jeff, you, Barry Eichengreen of Berkeley, clearly an expert on international economics and these almost codependencies. Professor Eichengreen making clear we really can't predict dollar. My issue is I see a trend. The fact is a trend is in place. Do you presume this to be a strong dollar trend, or is it a one-off election move?
I think this one-off election move has compounded what has been a trend reflecting US reflation stronger than anywhere else in the world. That is for sure. But up ahead, if we look at where the euro is trading in terms of valuations, I look at sterling, I'm not so sure.
The sum of 1999, 2000, 2001, as every EM nation said, we can't trust those guys anymore. We're going to build our reserves. Is that where we're heading now? Is to a new rebuild of reserves to protect them from the irresponsibilities perceived of a new president?
That is absolutely not going to happen, led by China, because they're bleeding reserves right now. They're bleeding capital outflows. They've got a lot of dollar debt. They're in no position to build reserves.
Right. So what does it, again, what does it mean for a lot of these, what does it mean for the China-US relationship when you talk about reserves, and also how much they own in terms of treasuries?
I think China right now, we need to take reserves out of the political equation, because if China, let's say, dumps treasuries or anything, that's absolutely an act of self-harm. It will hurt China much more than what it could do to the US, or when balance things out in the US. If anything, China needs to manage its capital outflows right now, irrespective of what the US administration says.
But is there damage? And we've talked a little bit about the dollar dynamics, and it's unclear to me, like a lot of things at the moment, what a mishap in foreign policy by Donald Trump would mean for, again, just dollar moves.
This actually came up at our conference earlier this week, so whereby one easy thing for Trump to do would be to label China a currency manipulator. Now, no, this doesn't automatically translate into tariffs per se, but Xi Jinping has his own political transition year to worry about. He can't afford to, look weak in the face of supposed US provocation or anything like that. So herein you lie the risk of something which could have been resolved behind the scenes and then escalating something a bit more dramatic. So that's one thing we are watching, actually a bit, so the reaction a bit more than, what tariffs can actually be launched immediately.
Do we need a Plaza Accord, and will we ever get one without China? But is this the safest thing, to talk us and walk us through a Trump presidency?
I don't think we're there yet, because currently, the US is less dependent, let's say, on external conditions. The US doesn't need as much Middle Eastern oil, for example. So, and the US's balance of payments relatively stable for now. I would argue even a stronger dollar that helps the US reflate, because it boosts US purchasing power, and that could actually help consumption growth.
And of course, one of the big differences here, we're in so much more of a floating world than we were for the Plaza Accord.